Well, good morning, Asia. Good evening, America. You're watching World DNA with me, Jyotsna Kumar.
And I'm Diksha Bisla, and coming up on World DNA today, Sri Lanka is evacuating over 200 crew members from second Iranian Navy vessel that made an emergency request to dock. President Anurakumara Dissanayake has revealed that the government of Iran had earlier formally requested permission for 3 Iranian naval vessels to enter Sri Lankan ports. We're going to get you all the details on the show today. Stay tuned.
But also on the show, the U.S. government has temporarily eased economic sanctions against Russia, and that is to allow Russian oil that is currently stranded at sea to be sold to India. Now, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said that the waiver was issued to enable oil to keep flowing into the global market. Of course, we'll be getting you all the details on that as well. Let's begin with the headlines at this hour.
U.S. issues 30-day waiver allowing Indian refineries to purchase Russian oil. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says the measure ensures oil flow into global markets amid rising tensions in West Asia. Emphasizes India as a key partner.
Trump says he wants a say in choosing Iran's next supreme leader following U.S.-Israeli campaign that killed Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Rejects Khamenei's son, Mojtaba, as a potential successor, calling him a lightweight.
U.S. House of Representatives reject an effort to curb Donald Trump's authority to wage war against Iran, as the president faces fierce criticism over launching the conflict without seeking approval from Congress.
We are not asking for a ceasefire, and we don't see any reason why we should negotiate with the U.S. When we negotiated with them twice.
Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi denies reports that Iran has been in contact with the U.S. to push for a ceasefire, adding that Iran is more prepared for this war than they were when the joint strikes happened back in June last year.
Israel conducts airstrikes across southern Beirut and other parts of Lebanon, causing loud explosions and panic as residents are urged to evacuate. Death toll from Israeli strikes on Lebanon this week increases to 123.
Saudi Arabia intercepts and destroys 3 ballistic missiles fired towards Prince Sultan Air Base as Iran continues attacks across the Gulf. No immediate damage or casualties reported.
U.S. President fires Kristi Noem as head of the Department of Homeland Security. Announces on Truth Social that Republican Senator Mark Payne Mullen of Oklahoma will take over the department on March 31st.
UK lawmaker Joanne Reid quits Labour's parliamentary group after reports of her husband David Taylor's arrest on suspicion of spying for China. Police later say 3 people, including Taylor, have been released.
Trump says he's unconcerned about rising gasoline prices during the Iran operation, saying if they rise, they rise. Fuel costs have climbed amid West Asia tensions, with the White House weighing options to limit the economic impact.
Now, of course, we begin with the developments that are coming in from West Asia at this moment, where of course, the retaliation from Iran and attacks on Iran are continuing. President Trump says he should have a role in choosing Iran's new leader. and rejected the possibility of Mojtaba Khamenei, son of the late Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, replacing his slain father, dismissing him as a lightweight. Trump said that he has to be involved in the appointment, drawing a comparison to Venezuela, where interim President Delcy Rodriguez has cooperated with the U.S.
Meanwhile, Israel's military chief has claimed that more than 60% of Iran's ballistic missile launchers and 80% of its air defense systems have been destroyed in the ongoing U.S.-Israeli campaign against the Islamic Republic. In a televised statement, Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir said, and I'm quoting him here, "We have neutralized and destroyed more than 60% of the ballistic missile launchers," adding that the campaign against Iran has now entered its next stage. Israel's military chief said that they have ordered troops to expand the area under Israeli control in southern Lebanon.
Now, fresh rounds of explosions have been reported in south-central Iran as well, where Shiraz University of Medical Sciences was attacked. Shiraz is one of the top and oldest medical institutions in southern Iran, and it has 17 schools.
Meanwhile, NATO has increased its alliance-wide ballistic missile defense posture following the interception of a missile from Iran, which was targeted at Turkey. Colonel Martin O'Donnell, spokesperson for the Supreme Headquarters Allied Powers Europe, said, and again I'm quoting here, "The posture will remain at the heightened level until the threat from Iran continued indiscriminate attacks across the region subsides." Well, O'Donnell also added that NATO had perfectly executed its missile defense in Turkey.
Well, Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has also weighed in on the ongoing war. He said that the ongoing war in West Asia has taken tensions in the region to a terrifying level that can spread further. In a televised speech, Erdogan said that the missiles and kamikaze drones directed by Iran against other countries in the region raise fears of the conflict spreading to a much wider area.
While Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said that his country was prepared for any potential ground invasion. He said that such a move would spell disaster for the Islamic Republic's force, speaking to the strategic Strait of Hormuz. Araghchi said that they have no intention to close it right now, but as the war continues, every scenario may be considered.
Well, to discuss more on this, from New York, we're now being joined live by Chuck Froelich, former Israel Deputy National Security Advisor. Thank you so much for taking out your time and joining us on the broadcast. Now, Trump has insisted that he wants a say in picking the Iran leader. Do you think that Israel will have a say in that as well?
I think what President Trump was saying is not that he intends to specifically pick the successor, but what he wants to do, once the United States and Israel have gone to this great effort, launching a war to achieve their objectives, then he wants to know that the successor regime will be a more favorable one, one which will be less of a threat to regional stability, to American interests, and to Israel itself. And so I imagine that there will be joint consultations between the U.S. and Israel about that.
Right, and Professor Freilich, the U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has said that the American firepower against Iran is going to surge dramatically. And also we've heard from Israel's military chief Eyal Zamir, who said, that the country is moving into the next phase of the conflict. Now, I just want to understand from you, in your assessment, what could that next phase look like?
Well, remember, we're 6 days into this war, and the first two primary efforts were to achieve aerial supremacy, and that has basically been achieved over all of Iran at this point. And the other was to suppress missile fire, which has not been stopped completely, but has been degraded considerably. The next stage will focus further on Iran's various military capabilities, but I think it will also focus, this already began, but it will focus far more on weakening the regime itself. And so that will, I presume, include attacking IRGC, the Revolutionary Guard's headquarters and offices all over Iran. The same for the Basij militia, which is a huge militia of, I think, a couple of million people all over Iran. They're the first responders whose role it is to defend the regime against potential threats. So hitting their targets all over the country, and various other capabilities that help prop up the regime. That'll be the objective, to weaken it.
Professor Freilich, you have served in the Israeli Defense Forces for 5 years. Now, we've heard from the IRGC that you also mentioned. IRGC have now come to another formation where now every department is they have their own heads. There is no one particular leader who is now governing what happens next. There are different parts. And then these attacks that we have Yemen about, Houthi have now said that they have their fingers on the trigger. How far are we looking at this whole offensive going forward? How do you see this war trajectory going forward? And how is Israel, do you think, how capable is Israel, looking at the fact that they have just come out of a war in Gaza? How do you see it going forward?
Iran poses an existential threat to Israel. It says explicitly that its objective is Israel's destruction. And ever since the Islamic Republic, it has devoted great resources, financial, military, diplomatic, in every area to try and achieve that objective. Now, we know that the real objective when the October 7th massacre took place was a first stage towards Israel's imminent destruction had the Hamas, Iran, Hezbollah plan gone ahead as was intended. And so Israel is very, very determined to see this through to a successful end. I don't know if that actually means regime change, but certainly a major weakening of the regime and a major and even greater reduction in Iran's military capabilities, first and foremost in the nuclear program and in the missile capabilities. And I don't think Israel doesn't feel any imminent time constraints. Israel wants to see this through.
Right, and Professor Freilich, while that is where Israel stands now, just to paint a comprehensive picture for our viewers, President Donald Trump has said that Iran is being demolished ahead of schedule. This is what he has said, and claiming that its air forces and air defense are essentially gone. Meanwhile, the Iranian side is saying that they are ready to carry on the counteroffensive, for as long as it takes, and they are ready for a prolonged fight here. Now, given the trajectory that we're on and based on what we know so far, how far do you think can Iran realistically sustain itself?
Well, I think for the Islamic Republic, this is an existential moment. This is something that they have feared for decades, and the moment has come, and it has come at a particularly inopportune time for them because the so-called axis of resistance that Iran has led for the last couple of decades was dramatically weakened by the war that began in Gaza. So Hamas is a shadow of its former self. It's basically been decimated. And Hezbollah has similarly been downgraded. It has maybe 20% of the arsenal that it had just a year and a half ago. And the Syrian regime, which was part of the Axis, collapsed. And there's now a regime in power that is a hostile adversary of Iran's, and Iran itself has been weakened greatly. So this is probably the worst time for Iran for this war to be taking place. And yet, for the regime, this is an existential war, and I think that they will stay the course for as long as they possibly can. So I don't think we're going to see a very early end to the war, certainly not days. And the question is how many weeks it ends up being.
Right, and Professor Freilich, as you've mentioned, the axis of resistance has weakened, and of course the assassination of Supreme Leader has delivered a hammer to Iran's, leadership. But we understand that taking out, one figure doesn't necessarily, weaken the entire ideological system, which is deeply entrenched in Iran. Now, I just want to understand from you. Now, could this instead, this overwhelming use of force that Iran is experiencing right now, could it also consolidate the hardline factions and trigger a survival response from Iran, perhaps?
Well, first of all, it wasn't just one leader. It was 48 and maybe more of the entire top leadership, military and political. And this comes on top of the war back in June, in which 30 senior IRGC leaders were killed as well. So an entire level or levels of Iran's leadership have been removed from the scene. But as you were saying, I mean, for Iran, this is for the regime, this is critical. And I think they will try to stay the course for as long as they can. And the question is whether the US and Israeli pressure will prove to be so heavy that the regime will collapse sometime in the immediate future, or maybe actually the war will end and we'll only see the after effect, which might be weeks or months down the line or even beyond. Remember, this is a very, very, very unpopular regime. Maybe 20% of the public still supports it, and the other 80% would like to see a different one in power. Maybe this war will create an opening for them to take to the streets and manifest public sentiment in other ways.
That being said, there are these attacks, of course, from the US-Israeli campaign that's taking place is, of course, all over Iran, including medical universities. Do you think instead of actually you mentioned that, of course, the people there want a change of regime, as you mentioned, but what if it is this attack is triggering, and inciting a feeling that they want to stand up for the regime? Would that ever happen? That they would, Trump has been saying that Iranian people should rise for a regime change. What if it's a different scenario where the Iranians who are suffering now from the attacks also want to still stick with the regime and the IRGC who have now taken control in Iran?
Well, let me answer your question maybe by asking a question, which is, so given the potential for a rallying around the flag type of response in Iran, which we do not seem to be seeing, but if that is the case or were to be the case, is that a reason not to launch the war? This is a heinous regime, okay? It's a regime which oppresses its own people brutally. It just slaughtered somewhere between maybe 10 and 30,000 of its own people in the demonstrations back in January. It's a regime which has destabilized the region and been a threat to regional security for decades, and which calls for the absolute elimination of another country which is at the closest point about 1,300 kilometers away. This is a regime which should not exist. So, I mean, if this has to be done, and I don't think it is, but if this had to be done against the will of the people of Iran, not all Germans were thrilled when the Allies attacked Nazi Germany. This isn't a popularity contest, and it's not a matter of public opinion. It's a matter of removing a major threat to international security.
And Professor Freilich, while that may be the case, and we understand that President Trump has said that he would like to have a say in who follows the supreme leader, but some analysts also argue that that scenario could be, unrealistic, noting that this parallel that has been drawn between Venezuela and Iran, it's deeply flawed because Iran is a more deeply entrenched system, and with that system in place and in the middle of this expanding war. Now, how plausible do you think is any externally driven political change in Iran's political landscape?
Well, I mean, I share your doubts or skepticism. Regime change is never easy. And you're absolutely right. This isn't Venezuela. This is a regime which is still very deeply embedded or supported by 20% of its public. And the system is deeply embedded. It's going to be very, very, very difficult to overthrow it. And I'm not sure that objective will succeed. But that isn't the only objective in the war. There are other objectives, which is further downgrading, maybe completing the destruction of the nuclear program, severely downgrading the missile program, severely weakening the links between Iran and its regional proxies, which is what it's used for the destabilization efforts. So it would be an outstanding success if the regime could be brought down, but it could also be a significant success even if that objective isn't achieved.
And that being said, so what, according to you, would be the end goal for Israel at this point? Is it a regime change? Is it obliterating everything? And if it does happen, And of course, we'll have to wait and see when the regime changes and who's the next leader. But will we see another situation like Iraq or Libya? Consider the fact, and what role do you think Israel will be playing after their goals have been achieved?
Ideally, Israel would like to see regime change, but I don't think anyone is counting 100% on that happening. And so if the other objectives are achieved, then that will be a significant success for Israel. Think where Israel was just 2.5 years ago on October 7th, the first time that Israeli territory had ever been invaded and conquered. And I mean, Israel's a tiny country. It's at the center of the country, just north of Tel Aviv. Israel is 8.7 miles wide. And in the north, it's 5 miles wide. And all the way at the bottom, for our viewers who can picture what Israel looks like, there's a V-shaped part of the southern part of the country. And at the bottom of the V, Israel is a few hundred yards wide. Hamas succeeded in surprising Israel and in capturing some of Israeli territory. They actually got halfway to one of Israel's major cities, Beersheba, and had the war. Hezbollah joined in the war, and had Iran joined at the time, Israel might have really been in existential danger. And now, 2.5 years later, Iran is in the process, I believe, of being defeated, and the axis of resistance has been defeated. So it has been a very difficult and painful 2.5 years for everyone. There's no doubt about that. But the outcome has been a very, very successful war, certainly on the military level. Israel has taken a hit in terms of its international standing. I hope that that will improve once this war is over. It will, I believe, create the opening for some progress in other areas in the region.
Oh, we hear you, Professor Freilich, and while we understand that, as you've mentioned, regime change might not be the ultimate end goal, but it is, of course, part of the objectives that have been laid out. And if that happens, what comes next? Because we know that taking out the regime is one thing, but ensuring that stability still prevails is a completely another one. And based on the trajectory that we're on with the war, there are very many doubts looming about the instability, the fresh instability which would be injected in Iran and how it would be contained. Because we all understand that this war also has a internal political domestic dimension here, because Netanyahu, of course, is also facing scrutiny from, the internal party lines about allowing Hamas to, carry out the October 7 attack. And do you think, with the elections also planned in the year ahead, do you think that has also affected the political calculus when we come to the war in Iran here?
But first of all, you're asking two separate questions, really. First of all, in terms of the stability, yes, there is a danger of instability. You know how wars start. You never know exactly how they will end. You can try and plan for them in the best way you can, but you don't control the way everything happens. It's not as if we're in a stable situation and the war is now creating the instability. We've been in a very unstable situation for the last few decades since the Islamic Republic was founded. And the Islamic Republic, in its relationship with Hezbollah, which it established, led to a number of major conflicts and wars between Israel and Hezbollah, and supported Hamas in a number of rounds leading up to a major war. And of course, the Islamic Republic has been in a state of conflict, or at least tension, with all of its neighbors for decades as well. And now we see what does it do when it's attacked? It doesn't just respond, which would be understandable, against those that attacked it, the United States and Israel. It has already attacked every Gulf state, including even Oman, which had been mediating between them and the United States just a little over a week ago. Right. So this isn't creating stability, it's hopefully eliminating future stability. Now, you're also asking correctly, what are the domestic political ramifications of this in Israel? Well, Mr. Netanyahu is a prime minister in a democratic country, and politics are part of every decision that every leader makes. And Mr. Netanyahu, if you look at the polls ever since October 7th, it consistently appears unable to form a coalition after the coming elections. I mean, if the polls are at all accurate, then he cannot form a coalition. And I have little doubt that he is hoping that this may also be a last attempt to preserve his political career. But that doesn't change the fact that there are extraordinarily good strategic reasons for doing it. Those are the reasons. The politics are incidental to it.
Right. Of course, as you mentioned, of course, we have comments coming in from even Erdogan who's saying that it might spill into a bigger, wider war. We'll have to wait and see where this goes. But thank you so much for joining on the broadcast and giving your insights into this. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And with that, we call wrap to, of course, World DNA. We have more lined up on the other side of World DNA. Don't go anywhere. You're watching Beyond Words.
In West Asia, every move shifts the world's balance. Wars, ceasefires, alliances, power never stands still. From Tehran to Tel Aviv, from Damascus to Doha, the West Asia Post cuts through the chaos to reveal the region that shapes the world. Because what happens in West Asia never stays in West Asia. This is the West Asia Post, the region's story, the world's impact.
Where darkness hides behind every corner. Where the truth is stranger than fiction. A show that dives deep into the stories which shock and mystify. Unsolved murders. Psychopaths who defy explanation. International war crimes. And millions swindled in financial fraud. The victims, the accused, and the sinister plot. Crime is your front row seat to darkness. Get the latest updates.
Destroy their
Breaking
missiles
news.
and raise their...
Credible, clear, continuous. Experts across aisles. Diverse voices, one platform. Beyond World is one.
Thanks for staying with us. You're watching Beyond World is One, and this is World DNA with me, Jyotsa Kumar, my colleague Diksha Bisla. Let's begin with the headlines.
US issues 30-day waiver allowing Indian refiners to purchase Russian oil. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says that the measure ensures oil flow into global markets amid rising tensions in West Asia. He emphasizes India as a key partner.
They're saying, how do we make a deal? I said, you're being a little bit late. And we want to fight now more than they do.
Donald Trump says Iran is reaching out to the United States to discuss a deal amid ongoing U.S.-Israeli military strikes on Iran, but suggests their request may be a little bit late.
Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi warns that Iran is prepared for any potential ground invasion, calling it a disaster for its foes. In an interview with NBC News, he says that Tehran is waiting for them.
Australian PM Albanese confirms 3 Australian military personnel were aboard U.S. submarine that sank an Iranian Navy ship off Sri Lanka. That clarifies no Australians participated in offensive action against Iran.
Israel conducts airstrikes across southern Beirut and other parts of Lebanon, causing loud explosions and panic as residents are urged to evacuate. Death toll from Israeli strikes on Lebanon this week has increased to 123.
UK lawmaker Rwani Reid quits Labour's parliamentary group after reports of her husband David Taylor's arrest on suspicion of spying for China. Police later say 3 people, including Taylor, have been released.
Trump says he's unconcerned about rising gasoline prices during the Iran operation. He says if they rise, and fuel costs have climbed amid West Asia tensions, with the White House weighing options to limit the economic impact. Well, Sri Lanka has now come to the rescue of a second stranded Iranian vessel in the Indian Ocean.
And this comes after U.S. targeted and sank an Iranian naval frigate, Aris Den, off the coast of Gale. When it was hit, 2 other Iranian warships were sailing in the nearby waters. Now, Sri Lanka has evacuated the crew from second Iranian vessel and allowed it to dock on its country's Trincomalee harbor.
Now, Sri Lanka is offloading 208 crew members from the second stranded Iranian vessel in the Indian Ocean, and the sailors are now being treated in a hospital in southern Sri Lanka. Some crew members would remain on board to help the Sri Lankan Navy navigate the vessel to the port.
Sri Lankan President Anura Kumara Dissanayake revealed that on the 26th of February, the government of Iran had formally requested permission for 3 Iranian naval vessels to enter Sri Lankan ports between March 9th and 13th. He said that Sri Lanka launched a rescue operation after 1 ship came under attack. Now, a second Iranian vessel is now under the purview and control of Sri Lanka, but he underlined that Sri Lanka is not a party to the ongoing war in West Asia.
ඒ වගේම අපි ජාතියක් ලෙස රාජ්‍යයක් ලෙස As a state, as a government, while maintaining our neutrality, we keep humanity as our number one priority. Our naval ships have reached the ship and are in the process of rescuing the sailors. We have made preparations to bring 208 people ashore, in that there are 53 officers, 84 cadets officers, 48 senior sailors, and 23 sailors. We have already started to transfer these sailors to our naval ships and bring them to the Colombo port.
Iranian frigate Aviation was hit by a torpedo while operating in international waters. Sri Lanka answered distress calls from the vessel. Listen to this.
When we were carrying out search and rescue work, we were able to rescue a group of people who were in the sea. By talking to them, it became clear that they were from an Iranian ship and needed urgent medical attention.
By the time help reached, many of the crew had already been killed. Sri Lanka's authorities have recovered 84 bodies so far and rescued 32 sailors alive but injured. Many others still remain missing.
Well, Aviation and Iranian crew on board the naval frigate were part of an exercise in India last month. Iranian soldiers were also part of a marching contingent as they participated in a city parade to inaugurate the naval exercise in India's Visakhapatnam.
Hours after the strike, U.S. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth confirmed it was indeed the U.S. which torpedoed the Iranian warship. According to the Pentagon, this was the first time since World War II that a U.S. submarine has sunk an enemy vessel.
The first sinking.
The West Asia conflict continues to escalate, triggering massive disruption for air travel across the region.
Well, thousands of flights stand cancelled, leaving passengers stranded worldwide. Several countries such as Iran, Israel, Lebanon, along with parts of the Gulf corridor have either restricted or closed parts of their airspace due to rising security concerns. The growing risk of flying through conflict zones has disrupted one of the world's busiest aviation routes connecting Asia with Europe.
Now, according to flight tracking website Flight Radar, over 19,000 flights have been cancelled in just a week between February 28th to March 6th, with the disruption affecting nearly 2.93 lakh passengers.
Well, cancellations have hit major airports in the Gulf such as Dubai, Doha, Abu Dhabi, Sharjah, Kuwait and Bahrain, and many passengers have been forced to take longer and more expensive routes to reach operational airports in Saudi Arabia and Oman.
Several airlines have announced changes to their regional flight schedules. Emirates, the world's largest international airline, also known for its 24/7 operations and reliability, extended the suspension of flights to and from Dubai through March 7th, cancelling over 2,000 flights since Saturday.
Well, Etihad Airlines, which is a major carrier of the UAE, will resume flight schedule from 6th March to and from Abu Dhabi, including in Ahmedabad. Now, a limited number of commercial flights scheduled from today onwards is set to operate between Abu Dhabi and a number of key destinations. The airline has said that guests with previous bookings will be accommodated as soon as possible on these flights.
In India, many domestic airlines struggle to restore normal operations, with some operating special flights since March 2nd. Carriers like Air India has added extra services between March 5th and 11th to meet growing demand, while considering additional flights beyond this period to accommodate high passengers and cover affected routes.
Indigo will operate 17 departures to 8 destinations in the Gulf on March 6th, while Air India Express will resume more flights to and from Jeddah and Muscat. Now, additional ad hoc special flights to and from Dubai, Muscat and Ras Al Khaimah will also be introduced to assist in bringing stranded travelers home.
According to the Ministry of Civil Aviation, a total of 281 flights scheduled to operate by Indian domestic carriers have been cancelled as of March 5th. And this has also impacted Indian carriers business-wise, as West Asia remains their largest international market and a crucial transit corridor for long-haul flight to Europe and North America.
In a strong warning, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has said the risk of nuclear weapons being used is at its highest level in decades.
Speaking on the International Day for Disarmament and Non-Proliferation Awareness, Antonio Guterres urged world leaders to stop escalating arms competition and focus on building systems that promote peace rather than investing in weapons of war.
Well, Guterres said that rising global tensions are driving military spending to extreme levels, while small arms and light weapons continue to spread around the world. He also warned that new and emerging technologies are making modern conflicts even more deadly, and the UN chief called on the international community to reduce global tensions and urged world leaders to step back from the edge of a very dangerous escalation. He appealed to countries to stop threatening the use of nuclear weapons and to end the growing arms race.
Guterres said the world must invest in the architecture of peace rather than instruments of war. He stressed the need for countries to honor the disarmament commitments, rebuild trust, and strengthen global systems that prevent the spread, testing, and use of deadly weapons.
Well, in December 2022, the United Nations General Assembly declared March 5th as the International Day for Disarmament and Non-Proliferation Awareness. The day aims to improve public understanding of disarmament issues, particularly among young people.
Now, skies over West Asia have turned into a raging battlefield. Iran is launching waves of drones and missiles, while the U.S. and Israel are scrambling to shoot them down.
But as the war escalates into a wider conflict, America could soon start running dangerously low on the missiles defending the region. Our next report has more details. Take a look.
The skies over Iran, Israel and the Gulf are raging with fire, smokes and streaks of missiles tearing through the dark. But behind this blazing battlefield, a chilling reality is emerging. The US could soon be running low on the very fuel powering this war. Across West Asia, the air war is relentless. Iran is launching waves of kamikaze drones and missiles. From American bases to Israeli cities and safe havens in the Gulf, all are facing the wrath of Iranian retaliation. In response, US and Israel are firing interceptors almost non-stop, but each launch is a race against time and against math. Pentagon officials now warned that American air defenses cannot stop every incoming drone. Many of Iran's weapons fly low and slow, slipping beneath radar and forcing defenders to fire again and again. But Secretary of War Pete Hegseth has reassured that Iran cannot outlast the US, adding that Washington has everything to decide the tempo of this war for as long as the US wants.
And we know their ability to shoot versus our ability to defend, that difference gets wider and wider every day. Our defense gets better, their offensive capabilities diminish. As we are going into ammunitions that we, as we said, have tens of thousands of and can drop unlimited supplies on, with even more effects than the standoff munitions we have now.
Iran's strategy is simple: flood the skies, force the US to burn through its defenses. A typical Iranian Shahid drone costs around $30,000 to $40,000, but advanced interceptor systems such as Patriot air defense missiles and AMRAAM interceptors can cost millions. Every successful interception protects lives, but it also drains the arsenal. Whichever side runs out first loses the advantage. And the pressure is only mounting. In US, the former vice chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, retired Admiral Sandy Winnefeld, has warned that US could face a serious shortage of key missile defense systems if the conflict with Iran continues at its current pace. According to the US Central Command, more than 500 missiles and 2,000 drones have reportedly been launched by Tehran since the fighting escalated. Reports also suggest that top U.S. military general Dan Kane had privately warned Trump about shortages in interceptor stocks just before the strikes began. As the U.S. skies burn above West Asia, the big question is, how long can America repel the barrage of Iranian drones and missiles? Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
And with that, it's time for us to slip into a very short break on World DNA.
Don't go anywhere. Coming up, a UK lawmaker from Labour Party has been suspended after her husband was arrested on suspicion of spying for China. We'll get you all the details on that and much more on the other side. You're watching WION World is One. Stay tuned.
Vielleicht nur als 5%.
Welcome back. You're watching World DNA, and the top story we're tracking for you at this hour is coming in from UK, where a Labour member of Parliament has been suspended for the parliamentary party after her husband was arrested on suspicion of spying for China.
And that triggered an internal investigation. Now, Joanne Reid, the MP for East Kilbride and Strathaven, has resigned the Labour whip while the party conducts an internal inquiry. Party officials have confirmed she has been administratively suspended during the investigation. Now, in a statement, Reid stressed she is not under police investigation and that no accusations have been made against her.
Her husband, David Taylor, was arrested on Wednesday by counter-terrorism officers under the UK's National Security Act. At present, he is a lobbyist with a firm called Earthcourt and also serves as a director at the Asia House think tank. Two other men believed to be former Labour advisors have also been arrested from Wales. All three have since been released on bail until May, while police continue their inquiries.
The arrests come amid wider concerns in the UK about alleged Chinese espionage and follow previous cases involving individuals linked to Westminster. Police have also carried out searches at several properties as part of the investigation.
Now, this development comes in the backdrop of Prime Minister Keir Starmer drawing flag for allowing plans for a Chinese mega embassy in London. At 20,000 square meters, the proposed embassy will be the biggest of its kind anywhere in Europe. Critics have expressed grave concern, warning that it could be used as a base for spying and pose security risks.
The United States has granted India a temporary 30-day waiver to buy Russian oil.
Right, and even as Washington maintains strict sanctions on Moscow's energy sector. Well, the move comes as US and Israel are fighting a war with Iran, raising fears of disruptions to global oil supplies.
Now, the U.S. has issued a 30-day waiver allowing India to purchase Russian crude oil currently stranded at sea. The decision was announced by Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who said that the move is meant to keep oil flowing into the global market during a period of geopolitical instability. And according to the U.S. Treasury Department, the waiver allows Russian crude and petroleum products that were already loaded onto vessels before March 5th to be delivered to India. The authorization creates a 30-day window for these transactions.
Well, officials say the exemption is tightly limited. It applies only to cargoes which are already in transit, meaning it does not permit new purchases of Russian oil. Washington says the goal is to prevent disruption in global energy markets and avoid a sudden supply crunch.
The waiver comes at a time when the ongoing conflict in West Asia is threatening oil shipments through key maritime routes, raising concerns over energy security for major importers like India.
Now, to put things in context, India relies heavily on imported crude, and disruptions in West Asian supplies have forced refiners to look for alternative sources. And at the same time, US officials insist the short-term waiver will not significantly benefit Russia financially, since it only covers oil already stuck at sea. Washington also signaled that it expects India to increase purchases of American energy in the future. The escalating conflict involving Iran is now rippling through the global financial markets, forcing investors to rethink one of the most popular investment strategies in the past year, which is selling US assets and buying Asian markets.
Well, the so-called Sell America, Buy Asia trade had been a major theme on Wall Street. Still, the sudden geopolitical shock in West Asia is now exposing Asia's vulnerability to energy disruptions and reshaping global market sentiment. For much of 2025 and early 2026, global investors had been shifting money away from U.S. stocks towards Asian equities, betting that faster growth and lower valuations in Asia would outperform America's markets. But the Iran conflict has punctured that strategy. Asian markets have been hit harder than expected because the region relies heavily on imported energy, especially oil shipments from West Asia.
The risk centers around the Strait of Hormuz, which is a crucial global shipping route that carries about 20% of the world's oil supply. Any disruption to traffic through this narrow waterway can quickly push up energy prices and disrupt supply chains worldwide. In recent days, tanker traffic through the strait has sharply dropped, with dozens of vessels delaying transit amid security risks. The conflict has already driven oil prices higher and also has injected fresh volatility in global markets.
Asian economies are particularly exposed. Countries like China, Japan, South Korea, and India depend heavily on West Asian crude imports, meaning higher oil prices quickly translate into higher inflation, weaker currencies, and pressure on stock markets. This vulnerability has led investors to reassess whether Asia can continue outperforming the United States in a world of rising geopolitical risks.
And at the same time, the broader conflict has already triggered turbulence across global markets. Stocks in the US, Europe, and Asia have seen bouts of volatility, while oil and gas prices have surged as traders rise in the risk of prolonged supply disruptions. For investors, the message is clear. Geopolitics is once again shaping global market strategy. What looked like a straightforward bet on Asia's growth story is now colliding with the stark reality. Energy security and geopolitical risk can quickly change the direction of global capital flows.
Now, amid the ongoing tensions in West Asia, many Iranians living abroad remain worried about their families back home.
Our Indian-Iranian actor, Mandana Karimi, says the situation in Iran has deeply affected her personally. Speaking to WION, she opens up about why she left Iran and the struggles her family is facing during the war. Isn't it?
It's not only me, all the Iranians who are watching the news right now is the fact that we have been fighting with this regime for 48 years. And finally, we have a little bit more hope that this is going to be the end of this regime and finally we can go back to our motherland and, we can live in our country. To be honest, it's a lot of reasons. And I think one of the breaking point for me was when I was arrested when I was 17 years old, and they made me watch my friends to get lashes. That kind of did something to me, it was more of like the breaking point that I cannot stay here anymore. It wasn't one incident that I decided to just pack my bag and leave. It's many incidents. Well, all I can say, hang in there. The help which Trump and Israel, they were saying that it's on the way, the help has come. Hang tight. It feels like in few days our country is going to be free. I'm so proud of my people. I'm so proud of the courage that they've shown. I'm so proud of the tiny little messages or images that is coming outside of Iran and seeing that people are still standing strong, because what we've gone through as a nation, it's heartbreaking. Iranians deserve better, and the better days and the better Iran, it feels very, very close and very soon. Just hang in there.
All right, with that, we'll be calling a wrap to World Dinner for today, but lots lined up on the other side. We'll be continuing with our coverage of the war in West Asia. Do stay tuned. You're watching Beyond.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Problem with NATO is that
in an ever-changing, fast-paced world, identifying the pulse of global happenings is important. Because it is the pulse that truly measures the real nature of world events. It monitors the shifting geopolitical landscapes and anticipates what lies ahead. At WION World Pulse 2026, we tap into the heartbeat of events that matter to you and to the world. 7 pulsating themes, 100 plus thought leaders, 1 dynamic platform, WION World Pulse. The rhythm of the new world order.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide, because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION, world is one.
In West Asia, every move shifts the world's balance. Wars, ceasefires, alliances, power never stands still. From Tehran to Tel Aviv, from Damascus to Doha, the West Asia Post cuts through the chaos to reveal the region that shapes the world. Because what happens in West Asia never stays in West Asia. This is the West Asia Post, the region's story, the world's impact.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide, because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION, world is one.
Campaigns, elections, alliances, controversies, and power play. Beyond the noise and rhetoric, no election, no ballot issue too small. Stories that analyze global and domestic politics. More than just headlines. A dedicated show with varied perspectives, expert take, citizens' voices, detailed ground reports, and in-depth coverage from political corridors of the world. This is Race to Power, only on WION. World is one.